They were brothers, they were Mafia, and they both wanted her. She thought she could keep her two online loves a secret, a fun little game. Kyung was the impulsive one, her escape. Jin was the calculating one, the one with the real power. But when they both showed up to the same meeting, her world didn't just collide, it exploded. Now she's trapped between a deadly rivalry, forced to make a choice, the reckless heart or the cold-blooded king. Get ready for a story where love is the most dangerous weapon of all. Trapped between two Korean mafia brothers who both want her. Where are you listening from? And if you enjoyed this story, please like the video and let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and keep the conversation going. Hana sat in the dim glow of her phone screen, fingers flying across the keyboard as she sent another message. The digital world had become her safe haven, a place where she could be herself without fear, without expectation. Here, there were no mafia families, no power struggles, just her, a woman who had two entirely different men in her life. On one side there was Kyung, the reckless, spontaneous younger brother. He had a way with words, always playful and carefree. Their online chats were full of jokes, late-night talks, and the kind of banter that could make Hana feel like she was the only person in his world. They were an escape, a light-hearted escape from her reality. On the other side there was Jin, Kyung's older brother, colder, more serious, yet somehow more intriguing. His messages were less frequent but far more intense. He didn't talk about the mundane, like the weather or the latest gossip. His words were weighty, meaningful, pulling her into a world she hadn't quite understood but found herself captivated by. Both men had, over the course of weeks, become central to her life, though neither knew about the other. Kyung was her flirtation, the escape. Jin, on the other hand, was someone she could see herself getting closer to. There was a depth in him she couldn't resist, but she never expected the situation to spiral into what it would become. It was on a late evening, after the kind of message she'd been hopping for from Kyung, that the unexpected happened. She had just returned a playful remark when her phone buzzed again. This time it was Kyung, asking if she was free to meet. "I think we've reached that point, haven't we?" he wrote. "We've been talking long enough. I think it's time we met." Her heart raced. She had known this moment would come, but somehow she hadn't been prepared for it. Hana had always kept her distance, never allowing things to get too real, but something about Kyung made it feel different. He was fun, spontaneous, and everything she needed to keep her life from being too serious. Without overthinking, she replied, "I'll meet you, but only for a quick chat, nothing serious, okay?" The excitement and nerves twisted in her gut as she made plans. They agreed to meet at a secluded cafe on the outskirts of town. It seemed safe, anonymous, a perfect spot for someone who was curious but not yet ready to cross lines. Hana arrived at the cafe, her eyes scanning the dimly lit space, expecting to find Kyung sitting alone, waiting for her. Instead, her gaze landed on Jin first, who was sitting at a table, his sharp eyes scanning the room. Hana froze. She didn't know him in person, but there was no mistaking that cold, commanding presence. She could feel her heartbeat quicken as the reality of the situation began to hit. Then out of the corner of her eye she saw him, Kyung, walking in with a confident swagger, unaware of the shock he had just caused. Jin's eyes flicked between them, a faint smirk playing at his lips. "Did you think I wouldn't know?" he said, his voice low but clear. Hana's throat tightened. She looked back at Kyung, who was now standing still in shock. He glanced at his brother and then back at her, confusion settling in his features. For a few long seconds, time seemed to stop. Kyung was the first to speak, his voice cracking with disbelief. "What the hell is going on here?" Hana, her mind racing, tried to control the panic rising in her chest. She had to play it cool. She forced a smile. I thought I was meeting someone else," she stammered, barely able to look them in the eye. But Kyung, always the impulsive one, didn't buy it. His eyes narrowed, disbelief quickly turning to suspicion. "Don't play games, Hana. You knew he was my brother. You knew who I was." Hana stood frozen, the weight of her deception pressing down on her. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. How was she supposed to explain this? How could she admit she'd been secretly texting both brothers, keeping them both at arm's length, all while pretending she was just a casual player in their world? Before she could gather her thoughts, Jin cut in, his voice smooth, yet edged with something darker. "I'm curious, Hana. What were you really expecting when you agreed to meet Kyung? Did you think you could play us both without consequences?" Hana's heart pounded in her chest, and her legs felt like they might give out. Everything in her wanted to run, to escape the mess she had created, but there was nowhere to go. The walls were closing in, and both brothers seemed ready to close ranks around her. Kyung stepped forward, his eyes flicking between his brother and Hana. "I don't care who you think you are, Jin, but she's my girl." His voice was raw, filled with a mix of anger and betrayal. "We've been talking for months. You don't get to just swoop in and claim her." Hana's eyes widened as the two men stood facing each other, the tension thick enough to choke on. The cafe suddenly felt too small, as if the world itself had shrunk down to this one dangerous moment. "I think you're missing the point," Jin said, his tone deceptively calm. "She's not just some girl. She's someone who's been playing a dangerous game." His gaze turned back to Hana, his eyes piercing her soul. "You're going to have to pick, Hana. Choose which brother you want to stay with, because I won't share." Hana's pulse raced. She had never expected it to go this far. Kyung was her fun, light-hearted escape, but Jin, he was a storm waiting to happen, a force of nature she didn't fully understand but couldn't deny. In that moment, Hana realized something she hadn't before. She was not in control anymore. Both brothers had been playing her, just as much as she had been playing them. And now, they were about to set a dangerous course for her heart. Hana's chest felt tight as the weight of Jin's words settled around her like a suffocating fog. Both brothers stood before her, the air crackling with unspoken tension. It was no longer just about her casual online relationships. It was about power, loyalty, and the dangerous game they were all playing. Kyung's anger flared. "You think you can just walk in here and act like she's your property?" His voice was thick with disbelief, the raw emotion in it unmistakable. "We've spent months talking. I know her, Jin. I know who she is. You don't get to take her from me just because you're older." Jin's eyes darkened and the cold edge to his voice cut through the room. "You think this is just about some girl, Kyung. You're both playing a dangerous game, and it's about time someone laid down the rules. If she's involved with both of us, then it's not just a game anymore. It's a war. Are you ready to fight it?" Hana's breath caught in her throat. Her head spun. She had thought she could control this situation, keep her connections with both men separate, but now it felt like everything was spiraling out of her grasp. The brothers were right. They weren't just playing for her heart. They were playing for dominance in a world that demanded loyalty and control above all else. She opened her mouth to say something, anything, to diffuse the situation, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say? How could she explain herself? She had wanted to keep everything light, to avoid the weight of commitment, but the reality of the Mafia world she had unwittingly stepped into was crashing down on her. "You knew who we were," Jin continued, his voice lowering. "You knew what we were. You think you can play us both and walk away without consequences. This is the Mafia, Hana. There's no such thing as a game when you're involved. You even have the heart to play two Mafia bosses. Well, now choose. Since you started the game, you should be able to end it." Kyung was silent for a moment, his face tightening in frustration. "Then what do you want, Jin?" He spat. He betrayed his brother. That was not their previous plan, but he couldn't let Hana feel disappointed because he loved her. "Tell me, what do you want from her? She's not a pawn in your game, and she's not going anywhere. If you want her, you'll have to fight me for her." A heavy silence hung in the air as Hana felt the sharp sting of betrayal, both from her own actions and from the brothers who had both become part of her life in ways she couldn't control. They were right. She had played with fire, and now it was burning out of control. I'm not a toy to be fought over, Hana finally said, her voice trembling but steady. She stepped back, trying to put some distance between herself and the two men who had now become her tormentors. I didn't plan for any of this. I didn't want to hurt either of you. Kyung's eyes softened for a brief second, but the fire in him never fully extinguished. So what do we do now, Hana? He asked, his tone shifting to something almost pleading. You're caught between us now. You can't just walk away and pretend this never happened. Jin stepped forward, his cold eyes locking with hers. You have to choose. The game is over, Hana. There's no room for both of us in your life. The weight of their words hung heavy in the air. Hana's chest felt tight with fear, confusion, and guilt. What choice did she have? The Mafia brothers' worlds weren't just dangerous, they were deadly, and if she made the wrong choice, it could cost more than just her heart. I won't choose, she said, her voice trembling with defiance. I won't let you force me into a decision. I'm not a prize to be won. Jin's expression hardened, but he didn't press further. Instead, he glanced at his younger brother who was still seething with frustration. We'll see about that. Days passed in a blur, and the weight of the brother's words continued to hang over her. Kyung had been distant, his anger simmering below the surface. Jin, on the other hand, remained cold and calculating, his eyes always watching, waiting for Hana to make a move. But she was trapped, caught between the two of them in a way she couldn't escape. Her mind raced, trying to find a way out, but there was none. She had built a world of illusion, convincing herself that her online relationships with both men could remain separate. But now, she was facing the harsh reality that those worlds had collided. Hana sat in her apartment, scrolling through her phone, looking at the messages between her and both brothers. Kyung's texts were full of frustration, his words cutting through the silence of the evening. You can't just keep avoiding me, Hana. I need to know what's going on. This isn't fair. Then there were Jin's messages, which were cold and to the point, but always with that underlying intensity. This ends now. You'll have to decide. I won't wait forever. Her finger hovered over the screen as she considered her response. Both men had shown their cards. One wanted her to choose him, and the other was willing to let her go if it meant maintaining control over everything else. But Hana couldn't bring herself to make a decision. The fear of losing them both, of losing herself, was too great. She set the phone down with a heavy sigh, her mind spinning. She couldn't keep living like this. She needed a way out, but how? Hana couldn't shake the weight of the past few days. The quiet was louder than any argument, the silence between her and both brothers now deafening. Every interaction felt like a ticking clock, counting down to something inevitable. She had tried to distract herself with work, a brief escape that failed to ease the tension gnawing at her. Each time her phone buzzed, her heart leaped into her throat, Kyung or Jin. Both were persistent, both were demanding. Both were right in some way, but neither had shown any understanding of what she was truly going through. Sitting on her bed, Hana scrolled through her messages again, her fingers brushing over the screen. Kyung's latest text was filled with frustration, as expected. Kyung, you're avoiding me, Hana. If you don't want to talk, just tell me, but don't shut me out. It was the same tone he always used when he was angry. The younger brother always wore his emotions on his sleeve, not bothering to hide how much this situation hurt him. He felt betrayed, by his own brother, by her, by everything. Hana sighed, her finger hovering over the keyboard as she tried to find the words. How could she explain? She couldn't say that she was just as lost as he was, or that she was scared of the consequences of choosing either brother. She put the phone down and stared out the window. It was late, too late to keep pretending she wasn't in the middle of a war she had no business being part of. The Mafia world wasn't a place for someone like her. It was a place of cold decisions, of life or death. Just as she picked up the phone again, a new message came in, this time from Jin. His texts were colder, but there was a level of control in them that spoke to his power. Jin, I don't have time for games, Hana. You know what needs to be done. We both know this can't continue. If you want to keep playing, you better decide soon before your time run out." She ran a hand through her hair, trying to process his words. The longer she took, the more the brothers would fight. The longer she stalled, the more dangerous it became. Jin was right in one sense. This wasn't just some fun game anymore. This was about loyalty, about power, and about who would claim her body and soul. "I can't keep doing this," she muttered to herself, standing up and packing the room. "I'm not a prize to be won." The next day, Hana finally gave in to the pressure. She couldn't avoid them forever. She had texted Kyung and arranged to meet him at a cafe, away from their families, away from the looming tension of their father's empire. She needed to see him alone to talk this out before it escalated further. It had to happen now. Kyung arrived first, his usual carefree swagger replaced by a visible edge. As soon as he saw her, his face softened, but the frustration was still there. He stepped forward and pulled her into a hug without saying a word. It wasn't a hug full of comfort. It was a hug full of longing, of a man who was on the verge of losing something he never thought he would have to fight for. "I don't understand," Kyung muttered into her hair, his voice thick with emotion. "How could you be with him and me at the same time? You should have told me the truth before that day. I don't get it. Why would you do this?" Hana pulled away, her heart pounding. She hated seeing him like this. Kyung was impulsive, raw, and unfiltered, but beneath all that was a tenderness she couldn't ignore. "I didn't plan for this," she whispered, her eyes meeting his. "I never meant for it to happen, but now I'm stuck. I don't know how to fix this." He nodded, his gaze softening for a moment, but then it hardened again. "You don't have to fix anything. You just have to choose, Hana, me or him, because this," he motioned between them, "this isn't going to work. I know my brother Jin, he is not going to take shit, and he is so heartless." She felt the weight of his words like a physical blow. Choose. Those words hung in the air, suffocating her, and all she could do was stare at him, unsure of how to respond. Suddenly her phone buzzed again and Kyung's face turned cold. He glanced down at the screen, his jaw tightening as he read the new message. It was from Jin. "Jin, meet me at the warehouse. This ends today." Kyung read the message, his eyes flashing with anger. He slammed his hand on the table and Hana flinched. "He's not going to stop, is he? This is what it's come to, huh? It's either me or him. And I'm not letting him have you. You caused all this, now find a way to fix it. This is unbelievable," he muttered in frustration. The tension hung thick as they stood together in the cafe, the air between them heavy with emotion. Hana knew what was about to happen. The brothers were going to fight for her, and no matter what she did, someone would get hurt. "I don't want this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want to be the reason you two tear each other apart, and that's why I am thinking I should walk away." Kyung looked at her with a mixture of pain and resolve. "I'll do whatever it takes, Hana. For you, I'd burn down the world. You cannot leave us, either you choose. That's the only option." Hana's heart wrenched. She didn't want him to burn the world down for her. She didn't want to choose between them, but there was no way out. This had to end now. "You need to decide," Kyung said again, his voice urgent. "I can't keep waiting, and neither can he." "I know," Hana whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "But what if I don't want either of you anymore? That's my decision." Kyung's face fell, and for the first time, Hana saw something in his eyes that made her question everything she thought she knew about him: fear. He was terrified of losing her, but so was Jin. Hana's heart pounded as the minutes dragged on, each one heavier than the last. She hadn't expected it to come to this. A choice between two Mafia brothers who were both capable of anything to get what they wanted. The fear in her chest was suffocating, like she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Kyung's eyes never left her, his gaze intense, pleading, as if her decision would be the answer to everything that had been building up between them. She could see the fire in his eyes, the raw emotion that lay beneath his tough exterior. This wasn't just about power or control, it was about him, about them. but she knew deep down that the path they were on was going to lead to heartbreak. Hana, Kyung said, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it, almost vulnerable. He reached across the table, his hand hovering just above hers but not quite touching. I've been nothing but real with you from the start. I've shown you who I am, what I feel. And I can't keep pretending like I'm not falling for you, even if it means getting hurt. But I will never let you go. Not now, not ever. He finally confessed his love. He was thinking Hana would choose him, but now he had no choice but to let her know how he was feeling. His words hit her like a ton of bricks. She could see it, the genuine love in his eyes, the kind of love that wasn't about games or manipulation. This was pure, raw, unfiltered emotion. He was confessing right there in front of her. Kyung, she whispered, her voice breaking as the weight of everything hit her all at once. I don't know if I can do this. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt either of you. But this isn't just a choice between you two. This is about my future, about my life. And I'm scared. He shook his head, his hand now resting gently over hers. His touch was warm, grounding, and she felt an unfamiliar tenderness in his gesture. I don't care about the future. I care about now, Hana. And right now, you're all that matters. I've never been good at this whole love thing, but I'm trying. I'm trying for you because you deserve someone who will fight for you. And I'll fight every damn day if that's what it takes. Hana's breath hitched. She could feel the pull, the love, the sincerity in Kyung's words. It was all too much. But even as she felt herself gravitating toward him, her eyes flicked to Jin, who stood beside her, who stood silently, watching the exchange with a calm that sent chills through her. Jin was always calm, always in control. It was what made him dangerous. And now it was making him even more terrifying. His eyes locked onto Kyung's hand on Hana, and in that moment it was as if the world stopped. The air became thick, heavy with the unspoken rivalry that had been building between them since the beginning. Enough! Jin's voice cut through the tension like a blade, sharp and unwavering. His gaze shifted to Kyung, then back to Hana. You're not going to choose him, Hana. You're going to choose me. Hana flinched at his words, her heart racing. The calm in Jin's voice didn't make his words any less frightening. He was a man who didn't beg, who didn't plead. His love, if it could even be called that, was wrapped in a cold, calculating package. He wasn't here for emotions or confessions. He was here to take what he wanted, to dominate and control. Jin, she whispered, her voice shaky, I don't want to be your possession. I don't want this. I don't want to be torn apart between you two. But Jin's eyes softened just for a moment before they hardened again. This isn't about possession. This is about power, Hana, power over everything, including you. You belong in my world, and I won't let you slip away so easily. You think Kyung will protect you. He's too impulsive, too emotional. He can't give you the security, the stability that I can. Kyung stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. You're wrong, Jin. She's not some prize to be claimed. She's a person, and she deserves to have a say in this. Don't make her choose between us if you're just going to use her like a pawn in your game. The words were sharp, full of anger, but there was something else beneath them, something desperate. Kyung's love for Hana was on full display, and it shook him to his core, making him more vulnerable than he'd ever been. His voice cracked as he spoke, the rawness of his confession hanging in the air like a confession to the gods. You want her, Jin? Kyung challenged, stepping toward his older brother. Then prove it. Show her you're not just about control, about domination. Show her you'll fight for her for what she really wants, not what you think she needs. The two brothers stood facing each other now, the tension between them palpable, the air thick with unsaid words and bitter rivalry. Hana could feel the heaviness in her chest growing, like she was suffocating under the weight of their expectations, their love, their demands. Jin took a step toward Kyung, his eyes burning with icy fury. I don't need to prove anything to anyone, especially not to you. His voice was a low growl full of menace. But I'll make you a deal, little brother. If you really think you're going to win her heart, prove it. Let's see who can really fight for her. Kyung clenched his fists, his face red with anger. "Fine," he spat, his words dripping with defiance. "I'll fight for her. I'll do whatever it takes." Hana felt the room closing in on her. The brothers were inches apart now, both ready to break. She had never seen them like this, full of raw emotion, of hatred, of love. She had never seen them truly fight for something before. And now she was the one who had to choose. Her voice trembled as she spoke, though she could barely hear herself over the pounding in her ears. I can't do this. I won't be the reason you two fight. I won't." But then Jin, ever the calculated one, did something neither of them had expected. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box, delicate, carefully wrapped. It gleamed in the soft light, a stark contrast to the chaos of the room. He walked toward Hana, his step slow but confident, his face hard, yet there was a flicker of something softer in his eyes as he reached her. "I know you're confused," Jin said, his voice low but steady, the weight of his words hanging between them. "I've been selfish, but I'm willing to show you that I'm the one who can provide what you need, not just in words but in action." He opened the box, revealing an elegant necklace, a diamond pendant that sparkled with an almost otherworldly light. The diamonds caught the light, casting glints across the room, catching Hana's attention in a way that she couldn't ignore. "This is for you," Jin continued, his eyes locked onto hers, his voice carrying a rare sincerity that Hana had never heard from him before. "This is my promise to you, Hana, to show you that I'm serious. I don't need to fight, I don't need to plead. I'll show you with everything I have, with everything I can give you." Hana's heart pounded in her chest. The gesture was grand, overwhelming even, but it felt like a trap. Jin had always been the one to show power with cold control, but now he was trying to buy her with a gift as if it would erase everything else, the lies, the manipulation, the Mafia wars. She felt the sting of the diamonds against her skin, but there was something else buried beneath the surface. She didn't want jewels, didn't want power. She wanted something real. Something she could hold on to. Kyung, watching this unfold, felt his chest tighten with an almost unbearable pain. He had been standing there helpless, while Jin tried to win Hana with his wealth, his status, his cold, unfeeling approach to love. It shattered him in ways he hadn't anticipated. "Hana," Kyung's voice cracked as he stepped forward, his eyes desperate. "Please, don't let him do this. Don't let him buy you with a necklace. This isn't what love is. This isn't real." His words were raw, pleading, a stark contrast to the cool facade that Jin had built around him. Kyung's heart was laid bare for all to see. "I love you, Hana, and I'm not asking for your love to be bought. I'm asking for a chance." But Hana stood frozen, the weight of the situation crashing down on her. Both brothers, her past, her present, fought for her in ways she never imagined. And yet, as much as she could see the love in both of their eyes, she also saw the danger in it. The manipulation, the control. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her shaking hands. "I can't do this," she whispered, barely audible, her voice trembling with the overwhelming pressure. She had been torn apart for days, caught between two men who, despite their love, only knew how to fight and dominate. She was not a prize to be won, not a piece in their dangerous game. Before either of the brothers could speak, Hana turned on her heels, her decision final. The pain in her chest was unbearable, but there was no way to continue this twisted dance. The Mafia world wasn't a world she could survive in, not like this, not with them fighting over her. "Hana, wait," Kyung called after her, his voice breaking as he took a step forward, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. If she stayed, she'd be giving up everything she valued. Her independence, her freedom, it would all be lost in the flames of their rivalry. She kept walking, faster now, the weight of their eyes heavy on her back. She couldn't look at them anymore. She couldn't see the desperation in Kyung's eyes, the pride in Jin's. It was suffocating her. And then just as she reached the door, she heard it, the screech of tires. She turned in confusion, her heart racing. A sleek black car pulled up outside the cafe, the engine purring as it came to a stop in front of her. Hana blinked in confusion, but the door opened before she could even comprehend what was happening. Out stepped a man, someone she didn't recognize at first, but the shock of seeing him so suddenly caught her off guard. He was tall, well-dressed, and his presence was almost too familiar. It wasn't until he locked eyes with her, a mischievous grin on his face, that the realization hit her like a wave. It was Minyu, her friend, the one who had helped her plan this entire charade, the one who had promised to stage her kidnapping to see who would fight for her. Hana, Minyu said with a wink, stepping closer. Time to go, the show's over. His tone was light-hearted, but Hana could see the playful glint in his eyes. Behind her, she heard the brothers' voices rise in confusion and rage. Kyung was the first to react, his voice hoarse as he rushed toward her. Hana, what is this? What are you doing? Where are you going? Jin, too, stepped forward, his face hard as stone, but there was a flicker of something, regret, perhaps deep in his eyes. You think this is a joke. You think you can just walk away, but there's nothing he can do because she had already walked away, tired of their game. But Hana didn't stop. She didn't look back at either of them, even as she felt their gazes burning into her. She wasn't walking away from them. She was walking toward freedom, toward a life where she wasn't owned by their rivalry. I can't do this anymore, she whispered under her breath, more to herself than to anyone else. She stepped into the car, Minyu closing the door behind her, and the vehicle pulled away, leaving the two brothers standing there, completely shocked and motionless. The car sped off into the distance, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Hana allowed herself to breathe. The air outside felt fresh, clearer, but as the car took her further away from the brothers and their dangerous world, she couldn't help but feel the ache in her heart. The ache that came from choosing herself. The game had begun. Hana had never imagined it would come to this, never thought she would be caught in the middle of a deadly rivalry between two Mafia brothers, both willing to do whatever it took to claim her. But here she was, in the backseat of a sleek black car, as Minyu took her to an undisclosed location. The plan was simple, a staged kidnapping to test which brother would fight harder to save her. But the stakes were real. Minyu had told her what to expect, but the reality of it all hit her in ways she hadn't anticipated. She was frightened, but she was also strangely relieved. In a way, this was her escape, a way to see both brothers' true feelings. No more playing games, no more pretending. Meanwhile, both Jin and Kyung had received the message, a ransom note, simple and to the point. They were instructed to find Hana, rescue her, and prove their loyalty. But what they didn't know was that this wasn't just about saving her. It was about showing who truly deserved her love. When the message reached Jin, he was his usual calm, composed self. He read it once, twice, before setting the note down on the table. His face didn't betray any emotion, but his mind was working furiously. The game was on. I will find her first, Jin muttered, his voice cold. His mind wasn't on Hana anymore, it was on the power. He had always been the one in control, the one with the leverage, and he wasn't going to lose this game, not to his brother. On the other hand, Kyung was a mess of emotion. His first instinct was panic. He needed to find her, to make sure she was safe. But beneath the panic was a quiet rage, one that had been building ever since Jin had tried to claim her with that damn necklace. Kyung's fists clenched at his sides as he paced back and forth in his private room. He's only doing this because he's older, Kyung muttered, bitterness seeping into his voice. He thinks that just because he has more power, he can take whatever he wants. Not this time. The younger brother wasn't going to let Jin win. He wouldn't let him control everything, including Hana. She deserved a man who fought for her, not one who used his power to get what he wanted. I'll find her first, Kyung swore to himself. Jin and Kyung both set out to find Hana, each taking different approaches. Jin knew that the game was about power, about who could outsmart the other. He didn't rush in blindly. Instead, he worked with his network, using his cold, calculating mind to track her down through surveillance, resources, and connections. He knew the game wasn't about who got there first, it was about control, and he would have it. But Kyung, impulsive, driven by emotion, didn't have time for that. He left the safe house, his heart pounding, racing against the clock. He couldn't stand the thought of Hana being in danger, of Jin getting to her before he did. He was going to beat him at his own game. Kyung's search led him through the dark streets, eyes darting from one shadow to the next, every movement a race against time. The cold air bit at his skin, but he didn't notice. His thoughts were consumed with one thing, Hana. He had to find her. He couldn't fail her, not like this. After what felt like hours of searching, Kyung finally stumbled upon a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city, hidden from plain sight. He hesitated for only a moment before slipping inside, moving cautiously, ready for anything. And there, in the dim light of the warehouse, he found her. Hana was slumped against a cold, concrete wall, her face pale and drawn, her body trembling as if the weight of the world had pressed down on her shoulders. Her clothes were disheveled, her eyes clouded with exhaustion, and her expression was one of both fear and relief. She had been waiting for him. At the sight of Kyung, something shifted in Hana's eyes, but she didn't move. She simply stared at him, her heart in her throat. But then, with a sudden rush of emotion, she jumped to her feet and ran toward him, throwing her arms around him in a desperate, shaky embrace. Kyung caught her in his arms, feeling the weight of her body against his as she clung to him. For a moment, he held her close, his heart racing. "You found me," Hana whispered, her voice shaking with emotion. "I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know who would come." Kyung's breath caught in his throat. He held her tightly, never wanting to let her go. The tension that had gripped him since the moment they had begun this twisted game began to melt away. But there was more than relief now. There was something else, something deeper, something raw. "I'll always find you," he whispered, pressing his face into her hair. "No matter what, I'll never let you go." But their moment of relief was short-lived. Just as Kyung was about to pull away, he heard it. Jin's voice, cold and sharp, echoing from the doorway. "Kyung," Jin's voice cut through the air like a knife. "You think you've won." Kyung froze, his grip on Hana tightening. He didn't need to turn around to know that Jin was standing there, eyes hard as steel, a storm brewing behind them. "I don't want to fight, but you leave me no choice." Jin's voice was calm, calculated, but there was something darker in it now, something dangerous. Kyung's chest tightened. He turned slowly, facing his older brother. Jin's face was a mask of cold control, but there was something else in his eyes, defeat. Hana stepped back from Kyung, her heart pounding. This wasn't just about them anymore. This was about the fight for her heart, a fight neither of the brothers could back away from. "Jin, please," Hana said, her voice trembling. "I don't want this. I don't want you two to fight." But Jin didn't listen. His eyes locked onto Kyung, the rage simmering beneath the surface. And then in a split second, Kyung snapped. The room was heavy with silence after Jin's words. Kyung's fists clenched, his chest heaving with the raw intensity of the moment. Hana was standing behind him, still trembling from the fear and exhaustion, but there was no time to protect her anymore. Not when Jin stood there, unrelenting, his cold eyes locked on Kyung. "You think you can just take her from me?" Jin said, his voice dangerously calm, his fists clenched at his sides. He was seething, but his anger was contained, controlled. And that control was more frightening than any outburst could ever be. "This is the end of everything. She is mine now, so back off." Kyung didn't flinch. His voice, thick with emotion, rang out. "She's not yours, she's herself, and I won't let you take her. I won't let you control her like you control everything else. This is about her, Jin, not you, not me." Jin wanted none of them to have her since he could not have her, nor could his brother. Jin's jaw tightened, and in a flash, something shifted in his expression. Something sharp, something desperate. The years of control, the years of keeping his emotions buried deep within him were cracking, and in that moment both brothers knew it. They were no longer just fighting for Hana. They were fighting for their own identities, for power, for the right to be who they were in each other's lives. "I will never let you have her," Jin repeated, his voice lower now, the intensity creeping into his words. The anger between the two brothers flared, and it was clear the moment for words was over. The air seemed to vibrate with tension, and then Kyung moved first. He rushed at Jin, his fists swinging in a burst of fury, not just for Hana, but for the years of being overshadowed by his older brother's calculated power. He couldn't hold it back anymore. But Jin, ever the strategist, was prepared. He sidestepped Kyung's punch and caught his younger brother's wrist in a powerful grip. The fight wasn't just physical, it was emotional, a culmination of years of bitterness, jealousy, and love. Hana, frozen behind them, felt the weight of the world crash down on her. She couldn't let this happen, not like this. "Stop," she screamed, stepping forward. The rawness in her voice caught both brothers off guard, but it didn't stop their violent struggle. Kyung tried to break free from Jin's hold, but Jin was too strong, too focused. The force of their bodies clashing shook the warehouse, rattling the old building's frame. Then, in a desperate, emotional outburst, Kyung finally broke free. He shoved Jin off him with all his strength, sending his older brother stumbling back. But Jin, despite the stumble, didn't back down. He looked at his younger brother, a dangerous glint in his eyes, and that was when the unimaginable happened. In a split second, with the rage and pain of years spent in Jin's shadow, Kyung pulled a gun from his waist. His heart raced as he aimed it directly at Jin. Jin froze, his eyes widening in disbelief. "Kyung, what are you doing?" But Kyung's hands were shaking. He didn't want to do this. He never thought it would come to this. But the fury that had been building in him, the years of being told he was too young, too reckless, not good enough, pushed him past the point of reason. Without thinking, he pulled the trigger. The sound of the gunshot echoed in the empty warehouse like thunder. Jin's body jerked, the impact of the bullet taking him by surprise. He collapsed against the wall, the blood staining his shirt almost instantly. His face twisted with shock, disbelief written across his features as he slid down to the ground. Hana screamed, her hands flying to her mouth as she stumbled back in shock. The sight of Jin, her older, colder, but somehow more intriguing lover, falling to the floor like that, was a nightmare she couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. "Jin," she cried, rushing to his side. Her hands trembled as she pressed against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, but it was too late. The shock on Jin's face made it clear. He wasn't going to make it. Kyung, his own face pale with disbelief, dropped the gun to the floor. "I didn't mean it," he whispered, his voice shaking as he looked at his older brother who was now struggling to breathe. "I didn't mean it." Hana, trembling, held Jin in her arms, her tears falling freely now. She didn't know what was worse, the loss of a man she had cared for deeply or the heartache that came from watching the two men she loved destroy each other. Within minutes, the situation went from bad to worse. Jin, though wounded, struggled to push himself up, his eyes glazed with pain. But just as things seemed to spiral further into chaos, a new voice rang out, their father's voice. The Mafia boss, known for his unrelenting power, was on his way to the warehouse, ready to deal with the aftermath of this incident. Jin, realizing the gravity of the situation, cursed under his breath. Without another word, Jin limped toward the back exit of the warehouse. He knew what would come next. His father would never forgive him for this. He would be exiled, hunted down. Jin had always been the one in control, but now that control was slipping from his fingers. As Jin disappeared into the night, leaving Kyung and Hana behind, Hana held her breath. Her heart ached as she stared at Jin, realizing that she had just lost the man she had thought she could never leave. And in his place, Kyung, the man who had fought for her, who had been impulsive, desperate, and raw, was the one who was left standing beside her.